price of Bitcoin drops below $6,000. There's panic on the streets. We go to the Tokens Blockchain Economic Forum in Singapore to get on the inside of the situation and find out what's really going on. Meet Miko Matsumura, the founder of Evercoin, and Tone Vays, the world's most accurate Bitcoin price predictor. Big dip. People think it's the end. You know, the bubble is bursting. That's it, we're done. No more Bitcoin. What do you think?
Oh, right here. You gotta buy that dip. You gotta buy the dip. I'm a believer in Bitcoin. I really think it's gonna be the innovation of the future. Bitcoin has always reversed because some of the smartest computer scientists in the world are working on it, making it more secure, making it more usable, making it cheaper to transact, and we'll get there. We're not gonna get there tomorrow, but we'll get there.
When will the price stabilize?
Well, I think there's probably a strong support level at 6,000. Obviously, that could be breached and we could go lower, but it feels like there's definitely like hodlers down there, right? And I think that's really going to produce that uplift that we need.
I do not see Bitcoin going lower than $1,300, and I think that is actually the ideal point for it to fall to before it goes all the way back up to 20,000 and more.
Ooh. Sounds a little scary.
There's sometimes a bus will pull over and then it'll stoop down, right? The bus will kind of lower down so you can get in easier, right? So right now the bus is lowering down, right? So in a way, like if you can get in easier now, like it's a lot easier to get in now.
We started with the Great Depression in 1929. Everyone talks about how bad it was. No one talks about how the market doubled every year for like 4 years. You want things to go up reasonably. So I'm kind of happy for this dip. If we would have went to 100,000, the pain would have been much worse.
What do you think would have happened if the market kept going up? You know, I mean, it was at 19,000 just
Absolutely.
A few weeks ago.
Yeah, so to me, like what's funny is if you look at the growth as an asymptote, there's a possibility that the line almost becomes vertical, right? And it's damaging. It's extremely damaging because the thing that people want as builders, right? In Silicon Valley, we talk about runway. So runway is the amount of time that you have to build the software that you want to build before it's over, right? So if Bitcoin does a vertical line, right, it's just going to, there's no time. There's no time. It's up and down in a heartbeat and it's over.
Expensive to buy a brick.
It gets crazy. It's too crazy, right? It makes no sense and it's just pure speculation and hot air and no chance to really build value because I think where the game has to go is we have to build the roads, we have to build the airports, we have to build the real base infrastructure for crypto. That takes some time.
Human DNA and ideas utilized solar energy to transform the Earth into a civilization worth $600 trillion. Who defines the rules for transforming chaos into effective systems? Centralized power or free markets? And who enforces the rules? Bureaucracy or something else? It's a history-long battle of ideas. Homo sapiens drove 40 human species to extinction when their leaders invented spirits. This led to centralization of power and growth of tribes' size and productivity. Competitors living in anarchy were defeated. Centralized states seemed like the only option, until the birth of democracy in ancient Greece and Rome. After democracy was replaced by authoritarian regimes, empires stagnated and collapsed. Thanks to decentralized, self-regulating guilds, Venice became a world trade leader. Once power was monopolized, Venice went from an economic powerhouse to a museum. Decentralization of power in England empowered innovators and entrepreneurs and led to the Industrial Revolution. Production increased tremendously, bringing wealth and power to Great Britain throughout the 19th century. In the 20th century, the crash of an under-regulated stock market in the US resulted in the Great Depression. Crisis and social unrest led to centralization of power across the globe. In some countries, it led to extreme violations of human rights. In others, it led to the growth of state intervention and spendings that seemed to be the only remedy. However, state monopolies caused deadly combination of unemployment, high inflation, and corruption. Thatcher and Reagan used Hayek's free market theories to gain support and remove the state from the market. Eventually, centralized planning systems lost to capitalism and free markets. But the bureaucracy still ruled the planet. Until the invention of blockchain technology, Bitcoin has already become a substitute for failing financial systems and central banks in countries with hyperinflation, like Venezuela or Nigeria. Will blockchain replace bureaucracy in every aspect of our lives, from capital markets to governments, or will it fail in its attempt to change the world?
Bitcoin jumped past the 16,000 mark on Thursday, and my guest today says it is not going to stop crushing the US dollar, and governments can't do anything about it. Joining us today is Max Keiser, host of the Keiser Report and a leading expert on Bitcoin who advised buying at $3 back in 2011. How come I didn't meet you back then, Max?
First of all, viewers should know that your jacket, nails, and are all matching. Your lipstick.
I did it for
it's
you
all
today.
rose-colored gold. Rose gold. It's the perfect color for you, Daniela.
It's a subliminal message
Gorgeous.
for my viewers
You're the only beautiful thing in the gold space. Everything else in the gold space is dead or dying. Only Daniela has life and is vibrant and is keeping the space alive. Without you, gold would be at $400 an ounce.
Max, you are too kind. First of all, what's your primer on Bitcoin for people who have been living under a rock in a minute?
My 1 minute Bitcoin pitch. Well, you see, everyone knows that there was a white paper in 2008, the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper. And it says right there, digital cash. And this is really setting things off onto a path of confusion, because you have to go back and look at Bitcoin in a different way to really understand what it's all about. Number one, Bitcoin is a messaging app. Number two, Bitcoin is a store of value. Number three, Bitcoin is a means of exchange or a medium of exchange. So that digital cash piece doesn't come in until the third stage. First is a messaging app. People ask, why is the price going up like skyrocketing, parabolic? It's because why did Facebook go up parabolically? Why do email applications go up parabolically? It's a messaging app. Economics is messaging. Currency is messaging.
But we haven't seen anything like these moves, though, Max.
In Bitcoin?
Yeah. How do you? Anything comparable? How do you stomach this volatility? How do you deal with it?
I build incredible bonfires of fiat money in my living room, and I set them on fire, and I toast marshmallows on them.
The real deal?
Oh, what? No. Well, I think right now what's happening is that institutionally, and players in Chicago, New York, the CME, the CBOE, and others are now coming to the table. So here's what's happening now, in my opinion, is that you've got these guys in the futures business, the futures markets, the hedge funds. They want to get into this business in a bad way. But as you know, as I know, and I created the virtual specialist patent technology, 5950176 is the actual patent number. I know about market making, and I know how specialists work in the financial arena. And I know that what's going on now is that all these guys are building up their inventory. They need an inventory. They need a basis for Bitcoin that's relatively low going forward. They're going to ramp this all the way up to a much higher price before they launch these futures products. Then you're going to see volatility, but from a much higher level. And then the game gets even more interesting, and we can talk about that. But that's why you're seeing this past week and a half. Once the CME said green light to futures, these guys, the pros, it's a relatively peanut market compared to the bond futures, currency futures, stock futures. It's a minuscule. Right. But so they've got to inventory up. They've got to get massive inventory on hand so they can play the games they like to play. So they got to buy it.
So Max, make the counter argument to the number one argument against Bitcoin out there. It's a bubble, don't touch it.
Again, go back to my 3 stages as I explained. Bitcoin, number 1, it's a messaging app. Number 2, it's a store of value. And number 3, it's a medium of exchange. As a messaging app, you have to understand that it's exponentially growing like that hockey stick moment, that growth spurt that you see in the technology space. If this was just a pure technology, if it was Snapchat, and it was getting hundreds of millions of new users every quarter, people would not question that. They'd say, well, that's normal because it's a viral, exponentially growing technology. That's what this is, but apply it now to a store of value, medium of exchange.
So to say that you got in at a great time is the understatement of the century.
Yeah, probably.
So if someone comes, and I get people stopping me all the time now saying, what do I do? I want to get into Bitcoin. I feel like I'm missing out on what others are gaining, but like at these levels, how do you touch it?
Well, I think it's going a lot higher. So you're still talking about a 10-time gain, 10x gain from here in the next, in the medium term, I mean, it's still going to outperform stocks, bonds, gold. It's going to outperform everything. It's going to outperform Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett famously said, compared Bitcoin to rat poison. And you know what? He's right. And guess what? Warren is the rat. Jamie Dimon is the rat.
I was at a Wells Fargo event yesterday who said they are absolutely advising clients not to touch Bitcoin with a 10-foot.
While they're stealing money out of people's accounts, Wells Fargo? Yeah. Oh, here's a bunch of checking accounts. I think I'll just steal money. Don't buy Bitcoin and have individual sovereignty.
Let's talk about the risk. People say market risk, security risk, and regulatory risk. How do you debunk these myths?
Well, regulatory risk is a non-starter because Bitcoin is the most regulated currency and security in the world. It's regulated by the protocol. The Bitcoin protocol is incredibly regulated. It's a beautifully game theory developed, equally balanced incentive system between buyers and miners and developers, and according to the hash 256 algorithm for proof of work stake in the cryptography area, and it just builds on top of that. And it's like, you have to, this is my comparison to gold, is that gold is element number, 97? On the periodic table, so it makes it uniquely beautiful and elegant to be a medium of exchange and a store of value because of its chemical properties on the periodic table. Well, you can apply the same logic to Bitcoin. When it came into existence, it had the beautiful, elegant, balanced, Cartesian almost beauty of having all these things in balance, working in a way that has never been done before. It will never be done again, and it's going to blow the roof off every bank in America and the world.
Most people tell me I have no risk tolerance for this because I can't tell you why it's down 20% today and why it was up 20% the week before. What is going on?
Well, I don't think anyone should be surprised if Bitcoin is pulling back, given it's nearly tripled in the last 6 weeks. So I would say it's very healthy. Otherwise, we would be staring at a parabola that's gaining in acceleration, right? I mean, it would just mean, like, by the end of next year, we'd be having to do log functions on the price. So, I think it's very healthy to see some consolidation here. Yeah,
but Tom, the story for me, in a market, I can tell you why the euro's a little bit softer today. I can tell you on any given day why treasuries have got a bid. I can never really tell you why Bitcoin is up or down. What's the story that goes with the price action?
Well, again, I think there's a really big misconception. Since 2013, if you wanted to say, has Bitcoin traveled on a path that's explained by measurable metrics, there's been two simple metrics. Anyone can access it. We've published on this multiple times this year. Yeah. If you look at the number of wallets and transaction activity per wallet, that's explained 94% of the move of Bitcoin in the last 4 years. So Bitcoin is actually essentially following network value, that as there's greater recognition, which means people open an account either on an exchange or they open their own Bitcoin, they acquire Bitcoin, and as it's actually being used, that network value is explaining 94% of the move. Now, if you had to look at that model and what Bitcoin did in the last 6 weeks, there's been a significant divergence. I mean, there has been an increase in wallets, but the premium to that is significant. And we wrote about how that premium in November was over 40%, and Bitcoin retraced 40%. Yeah. So, is Bitcoin just trading on pure speculation? If anyone says that, they haven't done their work. And I would say if someone says Bitcoin's a bubble, it's the smallest, least held bubble I've ever met. I don't know very many institutions that own Bitcoin. So how can something be deemed a bubble that's only held by a few?